1, 2, test. Test 1, 2. Cool. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Samuel Lair. I am the Legislative Director of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. It is my pleasure to host you all. We have a really great program for you today. Before we have our speaker, I just wanted to say a few words. Here at the Idaho Freedom Foundation, our primary purpose is to monitor the legislation that goes through this building and inform citizens about what is happening in their house. And I say it's your house because you have to think about what we are. We often say that we're a republic. Republic comes from the Latin res publica, meaning thing of the people, right? Our government is the thing of you. It is your thing that you own. This building is yours. That is why our founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton in particular, said that the people are the pure original fountain of all legitimate authority. Your legislators are dependent upon you. They're supposed to have an immediate dependence on and intimate sympathy with the people. And it is your obligation to hold them accountable. We often talk about, when we're talking about Republican government, that we have certain rights. You see this in our Constitution, that all men are endowed with certain inalienable rights. But there's also duties. You have a duty to maintain our system of government. And that falls ultimately on your shoulders as the people whose thing it serves. Madison, in the Federalist Papers, when he says, ultimately, what's going to prevent our government from degenerating into a tyranny? He says the genius of the whole system, the nature of just and constitutional laws, and above all, though, fundamentally, the vigilant and manly spirit which actuates the American people, a spirit which nourishes freedom, in return is nourished by it. You have rights under this government to petition your government, but you also have a fundamental duty to hold them accountable. And to speak here about that obligation that you have to be a part of the electoral process is Matt Edwards. Matt Edwards, the Executive Director of the Citizens Alliance of Idaho, a lifelong conservative. Matt is passionate about liberty, enable God-given rights, and firmly believes that politics is downstream from culture. His commitment to holding those in authority accountable is central to his mission. Matt oversees the day-to-day operations of Citizens Alliance of Idaho, hosts the daily program Idaho Signal during the legislative session, and works with citizens and legislator petition pledge signers to help preserve Idaho's values for future generations. Please join me in welcoming my friend and yours, Matt Edwards.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out today, and thank you, Sam. I just, Idaho is lucky to have Sam, lucky to have Idaho Freedom Foundation, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to introduce my colleague here in a moment, but I just kind of want to give you a quick overview of what we do here at Citizens Alliance of Idaho. That's me. That's my email, so you can email me or come up to me and get my phone number too. I'm not going to stream my phone number over the internet. Is that okay, Josh? Thanks. But I'll go back to this slide here because the focus today is doors win wars. Hey guys, doors win wars. And what does that mean? That means that when you knock on somebody's door, when you're out there canvassing and creating an environment where citizens are going to be aware of the message that you have for them at the door, that they are going to more often than not become more engaged in the process. And the process is paying attention to our elected leaders, holding them accountable, understanding how they're voting, and what is actually going on. You might get a knock at your door. You probably have, depending on where you live, have had knocks at your door your whole life if you live in the city, because it's a lot easier to knock doors in the city than it is to do it out in the rural areas. But if you had door knocking and people coming to talk to you about things that are going on politically speaking, socially speaking, within the state, that is where you engage and you have conversations. And sometimes, depending on the time of year, you may have never have had a door knocker at your place, or like I said, you may have encountered them all the time. And so this is a place where the actual act of civic engagement is happening, and hopefully civil discourse as well. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what it means to door knock, how important it is, especially, and I'm going to be biased here, especially on the conservative, right-leaning side of political activism. The left has been doing these things forever. They do it all the time. They do it extremely effectively. They've been doing it so long that the right has almost given up that method of communication in all sorts of areas. Is anybody familiar with the 1981 case in New Jersey that enacted something called, I forgot the name. It's right here. The consent decree. Consent decree, quick history. The consent decree happened in New Jersey when the Republican Party was out there trying to secure the vote and make sure that the polling places were operating, how they thought they should be operating, poll watching, right? And we're all allowed to go do that. And the Republican Party was doing that, but they caught themselves in the middle of something that was kind of egregious, and there was a case brought against them. But rather than go further without admitting any fault of their own, they decided, along with the courts, that anytime they were going to do any of these poll watching, ballot security measures on election day, that they would run their operations through a judge and get them approved. And what happened is that it didn't just happen in New Jersey, it affected the entire nation. So the Republican National Committee, if they wanted to do anything about poll watching or anything regarding ballot security, they had to get it approved by the court system. The DNC, however, didn't. They were free to do whatever they wanted. And so the Republican Party agreed to just do this. And it was very cumbersome. And they never created a national apparatus that then flowed downward even into the get out the vote campaigns. And so that left a lot of the national apparatus completely weakened by this consent decree that was enacted in 1982 and was only lifted in 2018. And so that's gone now. And so now the Republican National Committee does not need to go before a judge and try to get their, you can look more of this up on your own, but it's a fascinating story. But it just kind of showed that because of that, there wasn't this big attention on trying to fill the gaps. What we're talking about here today is not necessarily things that happen on election day, but things that happen in between elections, or things that happen leading up to an election. And a lot of that is just basically voter education. And so let me walk you through that. If you're not familiar with Citizens Alliance of Idaho, this is the root of what we all are about. It's a pledge. And every senator and representative in this house here, this building, swears an oath to uphold the United States Constitution and the Idaho Constitution. But some of you may have noticed that a lot of those folks interpret those two documents extremely differently. And so it tells us nothing about their values. Our pledge here is values-based. And so if you read the pledge and you look at it, you can see the things that we've outlined. And this is a pledge that we've worked with legislators on when we first debuted it, and also with citizens, to try and come to something that reflected the values that we felt and they felt were important to uphold and to preserve in Idaho. I'm proud to say that out of the 105 sitting legislators in this building today, that 42 of them have signed the pledge. And so that is a great spot to be in right now from my perspective. That's when we debuted it in 2021, we had 18. And so the reason why that number has also dramatically increased is because, in large part, due to door knocking. Here are our numbers. I'm just going to start off right away with what we've done as a group and and with our sister organizations. In the 2022 primary election, we knocked 65,000. I'm going to walk over here a little bit. Yeah, 65,000 doors. In the 2022 general election, almost 19,000 doors. In the 2024 primary election, 103,000 doors. In the general election, 13,000 doors. And then in 2025, just this past year, we did a big, huge educational door knocking campaign, which Gary's going to come up and share some of his experiences on that. And that was almost 33,000 doors across the state last summer. So in total, we're roughly at about 235,000 doors knocked since we've started operations, door knocking for legislators and sharing their votes, whether they are based on our pledge, whether they were poor votes or whether they were positive votes. We do something called pain and praise. So if we have a poor legislator that we feel is not voting the way that the constituents like and based on our pledge and stuff, then we do what's called pain, and we go door to door and say, hey, did you know that your representative or your senator voted this way on these bills? We do the same thing on the praise side. Well, we can say, hey, check it out. Your representative signed the pledge and voted for all these bills that were in line with the pledge. So kudos to them. We just want to let you know. And so that was the main bulk of all this. Here are some of our door knockers. The door knockers are, I mean, these guys are amazing. And one of the things that's incredible about this is the fact that when we find door knockers, they're ideologically aligned with us. They're not just for hires off of Craigslist. They go through a vetting system. They go through a process, right, Gary, where they become passionate. They learn. They study up on the people that they're door knocking for or against, and they really get involved in it. And the operation is truly remarkable. And these guys can knock upwards of 150 doors a day, in some cases. So these are a couple of the guys that were around last summer. Yeah, give them a round of applause right now. And the reason we do this is because how do politicians react to this, quote, pain? They avoid it. They don't want to have anything to do with it. There's the one big philosophy that I think we can all agree on when you encounter your representative or your senator is we want them to vote how you want them to vote. I mean, we all may disagree, right, on certain things, but when it comes to certain bills or certain issues, you have an opinion on something and they have an opinion on something. And if they seem to be voting more in line or more against what you want their seat. So we want to find someone else for their seat. So the whole point is give us your vote or give us your seat. And that's the basic nature of what we're trying to do here. So when they do encounter pain, the thing they want to do is avoid it. So they could dramatically shift their votes and start voting the way that their constituents and the folks who support our organization and so forth want. That's just a funny meme. We'll get back to that. But here are some other things that they do. They try and do as little as possible. Okay, I'm not going to rock the boat. We're just gonna like go through the session, not do much, maybe pass some rules or get on, speak up here and there. Maybe they'll run a resolution that announces that we're behind something, but it doesn't really have a huge effect on anything. Strongly worded letters, you see a lot of that at the congressional level, right? Oh, we sent a letter and we gave them 90 days to respond. Or make vague public pronouncements and so forth. Basically it's status quo. Like, let's just all get through this session and then we'll come back. And then we'll come back. And then we'll come back. The whole point is to we'll get to that in a second here. But yeah, but here's the whole point. It's to get elected, to get reelected, or to run for higher office. And so if we encounter politicians that are in that poor category, it's our job that we've taken up along with the citizens is to disrupt that and find folks who are willing to protect and to help preserve those shared values. Okay, voter contact. So when we're talking to voters, when we're talking to constituents, we have to have the right amount of data. We don't just randomly go out there door to door. And some of you may not like this. I don't like it, but some of you may not like this. We have to purchase data. You have to purchase data and the software to find out who you're going to talk to. All this data is publicly available information. It's your voter registration, it's where you're currently registered, and it's information that tells us and tells our door knockers who you are, how you voted, when you've last voted, because if you're more likely to be, if you're a likely voter, we want to talk to you first. We want to get you because you're going to come out and vote. And we want to make sure that you have all the information that we feel is important for you to have so you can make educated decisions. And so that voter data is extremely important to have. And so with that, I want to invite up Gary Miller here out of Burley. I knew I was going to say Buell. He's out of Burley, and he's a political strategist, and he was also boots on the ground last summer, door knocking as well. And so he's going to walk you through a little bit more of the intricacies of what happens at the door, how to use this data, how we use it, and how important it is. So welcome, Gary.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. So there's a couple of programs that we typically use when we do canvassing. I360 is probably the biggest one. And like Matt was stating, right, this is based off of data that's collected, right? It's not really effective to show up to every single door, right? When you're trying to achieve a mission of getting someone elected to higher office, preferably a Republican in our case, it's important that we target specific doors, right? People that are higher propensity voters that turn out to every single election, right? Some cases there's a strategy to target the lower propensity because they just don't vote, right? So us showing up at their door to encourage them to vote is really important to try getting higher turnouts. So these are just a couple of the programs that we use. Like I said, I360 is probably the most popular and easier to use for most people. This is kind of what it looks like when your app, I'm not here to educate you exactly on how to use the app, but this is the simplicity of it. So here on the very left, those are called books, right? So we make a universe, right? And the universe is for a particular candidate. And then those universes are broken down into books. And so you see here, this universe must have 30 some odd books. And inside each one of those books are doors, right? And that's what you can see on the middle image here. And this makes it really easy because a lot of the times we're operating to do door knocking, we're in teams, right? Sometimes 4 or 5 people per car, and we just disperse in areas and try to cover as much ground as possible. So apps like this allow us to divide and conquer, right? And this is all shared on the cloud. So for example, if I'm knocking with Matt in a particular area, as soon as I mark a house, it shows on his end that it's also marked. So we don't go to the same place, right? Now, if you see on the very far right here, this is just like a prompt you would see when you go to knock on someone's door. So the address is at the very top. We have the prompt that you would say at the door, right? You don't typically just memorize this and say it word for word. A lot of it comes with door knocking. It just flows out of the mouth, right? It's really hard in the beginning when you first start door knocking, like how can I possibly talk to random people all day? Well, it's not easy, right? So you develop, over time how to approach people. It's like, hey, my name's Gary. I'm just out here for, so-and-so. Do you have time to talk to me today? Right? And it goes a long way with people, the more comfortable you seem to be to them. And then we just have who's in the household, right? So in this case, there's 2 people in the household. Those are their ages, their genders. And then simply, if they're not home, we mark it. The system takes that down. And if they are, we just go on to the survey, right? And the survey will collect data depending on how likely they are to vote for the candidate or what are their biggest issues, right? And this is per candidate basis. So some candidates want to know, what do voters care about, right? Is it illegal immigration? Is it the education system? Is it the economy, right? And so that's data that we could record directly for the candidate so that they could take our information and data that we've collected and use it to better their communities. And this is just more, a couple of examples here, just things that you would normally see on it. And then creating your target universe, right? So like I said, with the data that we collect, right, we can set up exactly who we want to talk to, right? How likely are they to vote? Do they vote? Are they 4 out of 4 voters in elections, or are they low propensity voters? Or are they in a certain district, or are we trying to cover the whole state, right? So it allows us to customize our experience and the people that we want to talk to. So creating a target universe means identifying who you absolutely must hit, who you can't hit, right? So when we're targeting Republican voters, we don't necessarily think there's a whole lot to be gained by talking with someone who's Democratic, right? Not that we can't change their mind, but that's not exactly what we're there to do, right? We're there to convince said Republican to vote, towards the candidate that we would prefer, right? You do occasionally get sometimes a mixed household, right? I'll go up to a house and the husband's conservative and the wife's liberal, right? The wife answers and, it's not always the easiest solution to deal with, but, you take it in stride. Everyone's human at the end of the day, and I try not to treat people differently depending on their political values, right? I think that's pretty common sense. So Idaho House winning the GOP primary candidate raised $31,000. Total seats, 105. This is just district basics. Average district size, 52,611. The registered voters are 28,000. So you see, it's not everyone's registered. That's also another huge thing that we do with these apps. It's not just promoting candidates. Sometimes it's promoting people to get registered to vote, right? And that's important, right? As American citizens, you should vote. Not saying you absolutely have to, but it's your God-given right to vote, right? If you have issues in your community that you want fixed, right? What are you going to do about it? Besides, maybe better to you. Now, like I said, with trying to get more people to register, right? We have the past primary and we have new voters. So occasionally with a campaign, it's important that we try to get as many new voters as possible. And typically those are younger voters, right? When we go to households, there's a lot of young people in the households, right? Sometimes I'll go up to a house and there's 5 to 6 people living in there. We have 4 that are under 20, but over 18. And right, they come to the door and we just try to encourage them to vote, right? It seems, younger people nowadays are getting more and more actively involved in politics, which I think is a good thing, right? Because I'm all about the freedom of expression of ideas. It's important to introduce new ideas to everything continuously, not just the stagnant, maybe one line thinking that's been around. We want to introduce new ideas. So we're trying to encourage younger voters to turn out to elections. Just a meme, of course. And then this is the modeling, right? So when we're modeling universes, right, these are some things that we can select with. So the political affinity, right? It's important, like I said, depending on your client you're trying to target, you want to target the appropriate political affiliation like party. So this is just something you could do here. And then the voting propensity. So propensity means how often are they voting, right? And we classify that out of 4. So 1 out of 4s are very unlikely to vote, usually just in primaries, and 4 out of 4s vote every election, even the off years, right? So we can target that with the selections that we can choose. And then primaries, obviously, is very focused towards the primary instead. Legislative District 75, this district does not exist. All voters, individual residences, all GOP, as you can see, it gets smaller and smaller, right? So when you make a batch universe that you want to target, the very top is what you're going to see. How many people live in the district? And then it goes smaller. All GOP, smaller. You want to get 3 out of 4s to 4 out of 4s. Those are who you want to target. So it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until finally this is who you are targeting at the doors. Same with, if you were to target lower propensity, obviously the figures would be much higher. And then between 2024 and 2022, you can see an increase in some areas of residences or people that are voting. New Rs, maybe 200 to 300. So in this case, there's not really a ton of new voters. I guess it depends on your district. But 200 to 300 in this case would be the increase of new voters, right? And we're trying to increase that as much as possible every single year. Matt, would you like to take over from here?
Great, thanks. Okay, so when you see that number and you realize, oh, how many people are in the district, how many voters there are, it's all about whittling down that number so that you can make it manageable. And so when you do go out there and knock 5,000 doors, those are like amazing. And I'm going to reiterate this because this is a book here put out by folks who primarily dealt with Democrats. the authors here. And this is a book that the Democrats have been using for years and years and years. So when I say that like the GOP or conservatives or right-leaning folks have a lot of years to catch up on, it's because this sort of activism is something that they have been working on for a long time and are very, very good at. I know it's a little bit hard to see over here, but this is just a column here of all the different styles of get out the vote or voter contact, and how much they how much it could cost, what is the management program, the effectiveness of all these things. But really, it comes down to these, because these are some of the top 3 things that people do to get out the vote in quote real life. It's outside of social media, outside of digital marketing and such. So this is, if you're trying to turn out a new vote or a new voter or to guarantee a vote, it's going to cost. If you just leave literature at the door, that means you're not knocking on the door to talk to somebody. You're just walking up there and putting the literature on their door. It's going to take 189 doors to turn into one new voter. If you're making phone calls, it's going to take 35 phone conversations to get to turn over one new voter. And that's conversations. That's not dialing and getting voicemail or getting hanged up. It's actually having a conversation. Has anyone in here ever phone banked or done that before? Yeah. Can you imagine having 35 conversations in one day? They don't answer, right? However, it only takes 9 conversations at the door to get one new voter. And if you're the candidate then yourself, I mean, that's even more powerful. I know there's some candidates in here who are people who have been candidates before who have experienced that interaction when someone goes, "Oh my gosh, you're the one running." I mean, Gary's a great guy and all, but imagine how many doors him and his teams are out there hitting. And even then, when they have 9 conversations at the door, and that's typical. I mean, what is that a typical day, having at least 9?
It depends on the person. I mean, it really depends on the area.
It's the area.
The time,
yeah.
People are home. Obviously, weekends are much more busy.
Hey, come over here.
Weekends are a lot more busy, so when you hit someone's house on a Sunday or Saturday, because typically, we work weekends most times, people are always home, and so it increases to way more than 9. I mean, depends on the area. I mean, a lot of times, I would say the average houses that we would hit on a given day, anywhere from 100 to like 175, right? And maybe in a whole day, I think a good percentage would be 30%. So you're talking to quite a few people, and that's on a good day. And I try to make every day a good day, so talk to as many people as possible. Yeah.
So the power here is just immense. It's absolutely immense when you do the work, and that's what this is all about. It's about doing the work. All right. So this is about what it means when you're actually out there working, when you're actually out there knocking doors and going through the neighborhood. You do want to set out a timeline. Some of this timeline is pretty daunting because we have seen candidates jump in the race like 2 months before, right? And so, but if your goal is to knock 20,000 doors, and this is a very high goal, especially in Idaho for a legislative district race, but not for a statewide race or the like. But you want to have like 10% of doors knocked by 120 days before election. And then that number just increases, and you just keep building those doors as you keep going. And this is some of that common sense stuff that sometimes just gets lost, right? I mean, sometimes you don't get the right people knocking doors. Maybe they're better off doing something else. But if you can get the right people knocking doors, Gary, you want to walk through some of this and share some tidbits?
Yeah, so this is very important, right? On knocking on doors, this seems very, common sense, but like Matt said, not everyone's cut out for it, right? We're not actually selling anything. A lot of times we'll get to a door and they'll be like, "Oh, I have a no soliciting sign." Well, lucky for you, I'm not here to sell anything, right? I'm here to just give you free information. And so you want to approach each door with a smile, right? There's like a sort of thing we like to follow where we want to be presentable, right? You don't want to be at the door looking at the script on your phone. You want to be ready for anyone to answer the door immediately, right? And so these are all very important practices, but like I said, it really comes down to your social ability to talk to people, right? You want to have every conversation be as memorable as possible, because like the stats showed, conversations at the door are what's the most important, right? So out of the 9 conversations, that's 1 new vote, but we can try to increase that as much as possible. Like when I go to doors and I talk to people, right, we're really only supposed to spend like 7 to 10 minutes at the door, but sometimes I'm there for half an hour. Sometimes it's an hour, right? Their family starts coming home and then they want to talk to me, right? But I know that with these quality conversations, I'm not just talking to them. They're going to talk to their friends. They're going to talk to their family. And it's a trickle down effect, all because of a quality conversation. It's really important, right? And you'll learn very quickly, right? In terms of knocking on doors as a business model, it has a somewhat high turnover rate, right? People will come, they're like, oh, I can walk 8 hours a day and talk to people all day. It's not that easy, if we're being honest. It is for some people. Like I consider it relatively easy, but it's not for everyone. But don't let that stop you from trying, because it is very rewarding.
Okay, so just so you're going to see a bunch of tips on here. Hand off your literatures, you announce yourself, jump into the conversation. If they're not at the door, have like sticky notes with you. Sorry, I missed you. You put your name on it, especially if you're the candidate. Make sure you have all these things when you're out there. That you have your literature, you have a marker, you've got your charger, you got your cell phone's charged, and you got a backup. Dress nice and appropriate. Wear comfortable shoes. And you can knock doors with no soliciting signs, because no soliciting means we don't want to buy anything from you. Then you're not soliciting. Here's some of the don'ts that you don't want to do. You don't want to walk through someone's yard. If they have an actual path to the door, take the path. Don't leave the gates open, for animals' sake, and then sit in security. Don't be looky-loos looking into the side window. Some doors have that side window. Are they coming? And if they have a doorbell, don't just only ring the doorbell. Physically knock as well. And don't, despite what Gary might tell you, do not go inside the house. No, I mean, sometimes it can be appropriate. Some more do nots. No trespassing is completely different than a no soliciting sign, so we stay away from the no trespassing. Try not to get into national politics if you're not doing a national campaign, obviously. Never, ever, 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 ever touch a mailbox. Never, ever leave anything on a mailbox. Never touch a mailbox. Don't even look at it. Don't even look at the mailbox. Just don't do it. And don't forget that there are Ring doorbells. And so they're recording the conversation. So a lot of people have these Ring doorbells that record your conversation. Even if you don't have a conversation, they record you leaving the literature. They record you walking through the yard. They record you doing all sorts of things, like this guy. That's very inappropriate, but he got caught doing something there. Do not knock these doors. Obviously, we just did that. And then these are things that you need to be prepared for, right? Any anecdotes here you want to share? No?
Dogs are a big thing, right?
Here, come on over.
It all depends, right? You got to use personal judgment when you decide to go to a door. Sometimes there's a big yard, depending on where you're at in the country, and they just have dogs, right? And some people are dog whisperers. I am not. And it's not always a good occurrence when they show up. But, so on this list here, just be aware of your surroundings. It's important because, like Matt said, with the density of doors, you typically do knock in cities. Where I prefer rural, right? I like talking to people who haven't talked to people in a while because they're pretty nice, right? People in the city, they're pretty busy. They're not, they can be not nice, I should say. So you want to be aware of the neighborhoods that you're knocking in, right? Some neighborhoods, lack of a better term, might be a little ghetto, right? And so you always just want to, be prepared to encounter people that, may not see eye to eye with you, because it happens a lot. Walk your books in order that makes sense, right? Good thing about I-360 is it actually it gives you an exact route, right? So you could have 100 doors in a book that you're hitting. It tells you start at 1, go to 100. Really easy to follow, right? And this is all planned perfectly out so that you're optimizing your time. Because when you're trying to hit 150, 200 doors a day, time is of the essence. Refuse not home, be diligent on restricted access. The data, you want to keep the data extremely accurate, right? So if you're going to a door that's no trespassing, right, I wouldn't say not home, because that may repopulate later, and guess what? You're going to come right back, right? That could be restricted, right? Refused is more like you go to the door and they just adamantly do not want to talk to you for whatever reason. They refuse to talk to you, right? It's not restricted and it's not home. You want to try to keep the data as clean as possible, because a lot of times in I-360, when we finish with a universe, right, the voter contact, like I said, on a good day is 30%. But what about the 60% you didn't talk to? You want to go back, right? So we'll do like a regeneration of the universe without the people we talk to with the not homes, right? So it's important you keep the data accurate so that you can go follow up and talk to the people that missed you the first time. And yeah, use your data, wave to get more door openings. You want to be friendly. Like it said on the previous slide, don't look in their windows. Please. I go to some nice houses, right? They got giant windows. Makes it almost impossible to not look in their window because it's just a giant window realistically, but you just want to be as friendly as possible. And it is important that you do knock, right? There are doorbells on houses, but you'd be surprised how many don't work, right? You'll sit there, ding, ding, ding. No one comes to the door. It's because their doorbell doesn't work. So firm knocks is a really easy way for people to come across their house to get to you. On a note on volunteers, give your volunteers the benefit of the doubt when weird things occur. Crazy people. This is important. The amount of stories that I've heard from people that deal with crazy things on the regular, it's pretty high, if I'm being honest. People, have had guns pulled on them. I guess it really depends on the state that you live in. But things like dogs, they fell off their scooter. You want to give the benefit of doubt to your volunteers, right? Because those are the people that are pushing for success, right? Take them at face value. More memes. We love the memes. Matt, you want to go over calls? Yeah.
Okay, what can be very effective is to supplement all of this door knocking with phone calls or with follow up. Even if you're putting out personal letters and such. You can even start the phone calls prior and say, hey, we're going to be in your neighborhood, in the fall or in a few weeks. I'd love to make sure I come by and see you. It's all about just connecting with the citizens, with connecting with your community. I mean, this should be a no-brainer. And I know there's a lot of folks that I've encountered, a lot of candidates and legislators and so forth, who are already been plugged into their community for a long time. And so when something like this comes up, it feels like, oh yeah, I should do that again. They're right. Yeah, because that's what I always done. Why should I change the method when you're door knocking versus just sending out a phone call or a text? And having those things there. Obviously, some of these things can cost money. Some of them may cost volunteer time, but at least having that sort of that air support, you will, from the rest of your team. So if you're going to start a door knocking campaign, if you're going to start getting into this, purchase that voter roll. Like, get that data, get current data, make sure that it's up to speed, and knock these doors. You can still send out mail. You can still send out social media. You can still do digital. All of that is just a force multiplier for what happened at the door. And if you're a candidate, you do it as well, obviously. But if your team is out there and they're representing you, like how Gary represents, and all of the things he's talking about just being a normal, nice human person who believes in the cause. Remember, this is not just random, picking up random people and just saying, here's a bunch of literature. Please just send this around. I mean, you're better off just mailing it. You're better off just putting it in the mail. It's all about force multipliers for door knocking. And the data is valuable, so you should be making good decisions with it. All right. I think we can do some Q&A. Yeah, Josh? Great. Happy to answer questions. If you want to applaud, please do. Yeah, and honestly, I said it twice before. I'll say it a third time. Like the Democrats, the left, and if you're part of that crowd and you're here, you know this is what you've been doing for a long, long time. And this stuff is effective and it does work. Yes.
Hi, thanks for coming all the way down from northern Idaho.
My pleasure.
I'm Lynn Braditsky, and you know that I ran for Boise City Council, and I did access the Citizens Alliance door knockers. And I want to say that it was the best experience ever, because I have been a door knocker. I worked in Georgia after the 2020 for the Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue runoff. And I knocked on 540 doors in rural areas on 3-acre parcels. So it took me a long time to walk from one house to the other. So I know how hard it is. And everything you just said is absolutely true. And I would encourage anyone that is thinking of running for office to engage with these and hire door knockers and get your good data, because that's what's most important. And I believe that for my council race, we knocked on 20,000 doors.
Wow.
I mean, and I heard from a lot of people, it was a nonpartisan race. So people were actually calling me because of the literature that I handed out was with my phone number. So they wanted to find out if I was a Republican, so they would call me. So it was a very, very good experience. And I would highly recommend engaging with Citizens Alliance of Idaho. And if you are so engaged, I would know that they could use the financial support. So please reach in your pocket and support this organization. It's fabulous. And I had a great experience.
Well, thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. You're hired. Hi there.
Hi. So recently I did a post on Facebook pointing out the fact that progressives vote. Not only do they vote, but they run for office. Not only do they run for office, but they're a lot more bold and forceful in getting their agendas through. Muslims, the same thing. Not only do they vote, they run for office. When they run for office, they're a lot more bold and forceful in what they do. And my challenge was to Christians who misunderstand separation of church and state to such a degree that if we could just get the Christians to come out and vote, we would not have to door knock on any non-Christians to win these elections for godly people. So I was just wondering, your particular group, do you have any church outreach, or do you leave that for other groups in the area that are more Christian-based?
Yeah, I mean, we want to engage with people that share our values, right? And I believe the values that you saw listed in the pledge, they marry a lot with Christian values as well. And so when we do outreach, I mean, yeah, if it's specifically to a church, I mean, I've spoken at a church before, so I'm not afraid to go speak at churches in front of communities like that.
So how do you get those invitations? Do you actually have like a small part of your group that is actually trying to get invitations to go speak at churches?
I mean, we encourage it. Unfortunately, I mean,
Right.
we're a small team, so I don't have people at the ready to go to every place that we get invited to. But I mean, if you want to invite me, I'll try my best to be there. Yeah.
Well, and I know that Idaho Family Policy Center,
Right.
they do some of that too.
Yeah,
So
they do
I mean, there's a lot of
and
really
stuff.
good
Yeah.
groups in the area, and I just wasn't sure how much you overlap.
Gotcha.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Hi.
My name is Alice Carlson, and I'm from Mountain Home. And we, being in a rural area, smaller town, but we are large too. The area, Elmore County, is huge. And the Republican Party there, I'm involved with. My brother was a committee man. And when you were talking about door knockers and people who actually came to the door, I lived in Arizona for 34 years. I only had one state representative ever come to my door and knock. It was rural Arizona, but still, I thought that was, of course I voted for her, And then since I've been in Mountain Home, I've had 2 people knock on my door, except one was my brother, who was a committee man for the Republican Party. So, you can't really count him. And then I had one other person in 5 years. So I know how important that is, and how I saw in your first picture, the young people. How do you find them?
Is it campaignjobsnow.com? Yeah. So we have a portal for like a hiring portal, you know. I mean, it's done through, and when I say we, I want to be careful because, like, you know, there's with how the laws work and everything, like our organization will contract with door knocking companies, you know what I mean? So they're all aligned on the same side. So when I say campaign, what is it? Campaignjobsnow.com is run by the company that specifically handles all of the logistics for paid door knocking. So they'll do the vetting, and we're all aligned with it. And so, and the reason for it is because it's not just, I mean, when we sent these guys across the summer across Idaho, I mean, I think Rory's from Idaho Falls, and he's knocking doors in North Idaho. He's knocking them down here in the Treasure Valley and Magic Valley, up in, you know, Haley and those areas. So we have to get Airbnbs or hotels and motels. We have to get rental cars, right? You have to get gas cards so that they can pay for it all. So it's a lot. It's a huge infrastructure that has to be set up that's there. So I don't know if I went. Yes. All right.
People knocking on doors. Thank you, gentlemen. And just one more thing, if we could get the Republican Party in Mountain Home to invite you, would you come to one of our meetings, and somebody from your organization or?
In Elmore County?
Yeah.
Anywhere but Elmore, sorry. No, of course.
My brother.
That's fine, yeah. I'd be happy to, yes.
Okay.
So talk to me after.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, when it comes to finding people to do this knocking, a lot of it comes off of actually recommendations, right? I started in 2021, but it was because my friend mentioned it to me, right? He came up to me, he's like, hey, you want to go to West Virginia and knock on doors? I'm like, I can try. And I went, and, you know, being able to travel, you know, I travel a ton when I knock doors, you know, and like he said, like, there's Airbnbs, you know, you're staying with a lot of times just random people, but they turn into really good friendships, right? But in terms of finding or procuring more knockers, a lot of that is recommendations, right? Friends or family that align with you politically, you just put the seed out there, and that's really a really good way to find people that are on the same line and values as you to do the work of door knocking. That's what I would say.
Gentlemen, and we appreciate you so much. Hi, Matt. I'm your caller from Emmett last week.
Oh, wow. Awesome. We played her voicemail on Idaho Signal. Now you get to meet you in person.
So I'm very familiar with the crossover voting, but also I just wanted in your tips that you ran through, very good tips. I agree with the conversation stuff, but we have a lot of battles obviously in Jim County, but one of the things we learned finally we brought challengers to the candidates because there had never, I guess for many, many years, maybe decades, never been challengers. And part of that process, you're learning lots of things. And it took like our PC candidate for our personal precinct did her own door knocking, which was great because that's very powerful. But the combination of her doing that, and then I also had started working the polls as well. And so between the two of us, getting more information, kind of learning the landscape of your political landscape of your area, because it's different all over Idaho. And one of the things we learned, because she didn't have the money to go in counties where it's smaller, I guess it's more doable. Just go to your county clerk and they'll print you off lists of the registered voters, and some will charge. She didn't get charged, but she was able to do her door knocking and talking to people, and she got some of those doors where there can be mixed, and she ended up talking to some unaffiliated, which while I was working polls, I also learned more about unaffiliated voters. And I think it's very important to be targeting those unaffiliated voters. Maybe some areas it's not. So again, learn the landscape of the political landscape of where you are. But what we did find out with that conversation is so important, talking to people, because talking to them, learning that in an area of like ours, there weren't challengers. A lot of people stopped voting because there aren't challengers.
So people just are like, we're not voting. It's the same people all the time. And there's no point in voting. So voter turnout is terrible. And then also on top of that, a lot of people purposely unaffiliate because they don't want all the mailers, all the propaganda, coming to their house. So on voting day in the primaries, you can just go as unaffiliated and register Republican that day and whatever. So what we did not do is target the unaffiliated. So I do think that is a lesson learned, a lesson that, or a tip that people could take. And, unless you're in an area where you don't have those problems, I don't know. But big important thing is to just talk to people and get to know people and have those conversations.
Yeah, well, thank you for what you're doing, because it's the big takeaway for me from that too is that like some people live very, very busy lives, and there's only a few folks out there that can devote this much time and energy to getting information out. And so most people are very appreciative when they get a special invitation, come to my house with information, not like, oh, where should I go? But this moment where a candidate can show up or somebody who's sharing information, it feels like a special invitation. Like, wow, you came to my house. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, excuse me. I have a question and comment after the question. Elections every 2 years, okay? Then you have the off-year city elections. Between those, I just feel from my door knocking experiences that people are getting tired of all these elections coming at them and all the door knockings and all the, mailers and everything. And how do you approach your door knocking when they get inundated almost every year?
Yeah, the fatigue, the voter fatigue, all of that stuff. I mean, what are some encounters that you've had when someone says, again, we're doing this again? Have you had those conversations?
It's actually pretty common to go up to a door and someone's like, oh, you're here for this person again. And it really is because they get bombarded, right? I guess depending on the races and, how much money the people who are running have, they'll get many, many texts, mailers, door hangers, and then finally door knockers, right? And so when you come across someone who's just completely inundated with people all the time trying to get their vote, it can be difficult to strike up a conversation. But that's where we try to reel in that this is a one-on-one conversation, right? The mailers, the text that can't convey what I'm about to convey to you, right? You want to try to signify that this conversation, yes, you've been bombarded so far, can lead to something more meaningful than the text and the mailers, because the stats do show it's highly effective compared to the other ways that you could try to encourage people to vote, right? So it does happen when you come across people who have been bombarded, and all you can do is, like, you want to verify their problem. Like, yeah, I totally get it, right? I understand where you're coming from, right? And then just try to roll into why you're there, right? Like if it's for candidate, Matt, right? Oh, I keep getting texts about candidate Matt and emails and mailers. I'm like, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, right? And I'm actually here for Matt, right? And you want to roll into it and trying to give them new information that they don't already have, right? Make the conversation worthwhile, right? I'm not a big fan, of the mailers and texts myself. It doesn't seem effective, right? And if you're a candidate running and you're putting money into how do you want to contact these voters, door knockers, it's obviously not cheap, but the impact is so much greater than the other methods. Although following up with calls, obviously a good thing, and then maybe a text here or there, but you don't want to wear your voters out. And when you do find a wore out voter, just try to make that conversation something special for them, because it does mean more than just a piece of paper or a text at the end of the day.
Experience is door knocking when I was door knocking for myself for PC and back in the day of 17, and I was door knocking for at my party, and so one time I'm going up to this house and a big picture window about the size of that screen, and the guy looks at me coming up, and so I knock really politely, and he opens the door, And then as hard as he could, he slammed the door in my face. And I was so down after that. I mean, it was just sad. I wanted to burn the guy's house down, to be honest. I'm still here and I restrained myself. But my point is, I lost that PC election 35-20, by the way. So I've had good experiences, don't get me wrong. Talking to, I help veterans also. One guy was a veteran and I helped him with this claim, and it got him to the right direction. So there could be a lot of positive attributes to meeting people, and I agree with that, but boy, don't slam that door in my face again.
One more? Yeah, I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for everything you're doing. Quick question. What would be the pro tips, list of do's and don'ts, and best practices around children, or when a child is coming to the door instead of the parents? What would you do? What would you recommend?
That's a great question. Yeah. Any encounters there?
You know, it honestly happens a lot. You'd be surprised how many parents let their kids answer the door. Nothing against it. I'm not judging. It happens a lot in more like Jewish communities, if I'm being honest. I don't know why. But the kids will come to the door, and the way that I tackle them, like, hey, is your mom or dad home? You know, and, you know, the parents are very protective, right? But I try to be as off-putting as possible, right? Because even when I'm going up to someone's door, like their kids are playing outside, I don't see the parents, right? It's kind of odd for a stranger just to be walking up to someone's house when their kids are outside. And so you just have to be as least off-putting as possible. And when the kid does come to the door, try to speak a little loudly over the kid. Be like, hey, is your mom home? So that the parent who's at home could possibly hear you. But I've never really had, I can't even say a single bad encounter where it has been the kid first. They usually just go and get their parents. And if the parents aren't home, I'm like, oh, could you give this to your mom for me? And I'll just give them the information, right? If that answers your question.
I thought you were going to say if they were the left, you just sign them up to vote, you know.
Hi, sweetie. I'm going to be doing group door knockings. One location, multiple doors. I've joined a group. They're calling us senior ambassadors. And so we're going to be visiting 55 and over communities. We're going to do assisted living in that, any kind of special literature for that, and we're going to be registering if they haven't re-registered at the new location, which we think, you know, if you move, you may not do that, and we're going to make it easy for them. We're supposed to be apolitical, but we're going to have guest speakers. But anything special for the literature for, if we go into a group hoping to have maybe 30, 40, 50 people.
Yeah. I mean, my first reaction is large print on the legend. You'd be surprised, but.
No, I understand. Yeah. I'm old, folks. And font, and it's like, we need to get it just county by county. Okay.
And then also probably phone numbers too. People like to have conversations rather than emails. You know, leave the digital stuff off. You know, focus on the good stuff there. There you go. Yeah. I'd say that was it. Yeah, we're good. Well, hey, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate the turnout here, and I'm happy to hang out for a little bit longer if you had a personal question or you want to get my contact info. But I thank you, Sam. I thank Idaho Freedom Foundation. You guys have been awesome. Thanks for having us.
I have one quick story for you guys for your leave about that question about how do you get young people to vote. And like most people, I started my time in politics in knocking doors. 2018 was my second election cycle. And I worked in Reno, Nevada, and we had to drive down to a Trump campaign rally in Las Vegas. And big, long, 8-hour car ride. And I ended up sitting next to this cute little blonde girl. And 8 years later, I'm happy to say that me and her are expecting our second child together. So at least in my experience, campaigning is a great way to meet girls. So tell your children and grandchildren if they're single, if they want to meet girls, campaigning is the way to do it. Thank you guys for coming. It was great having you guys.